Okay, welcome everyone to my continuation of what are my favorite fields of mathematics, a very biased collection of favorite fields of mathematics. So what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to give you kind of an overview of fields of mathematics where I'm really very generous what counts as a field. So everything where there is a some textbook on it, I count that as a field, and I kind of mix them up randomly and then do then some kind of video about them where I kind of explain the main ideas and maybe a prototypical theorem in those fields. And I'm not really talking about fields like number theory or geometry, which are very large fields. No, I want to zoom in a little bit. I kind of assume that everyone, well, maybe not everyone, but everyone watching this channel knows what number theory is. So it's kind of a little bit pointless to talk about number theory as a field. But maybe if I zoom in a little bit, it gets much more interesting. And here's a field which is like in the intersection of number theory and combinatorics and graph theory, maybe finite geometry, which is called additive combinatorics. And yes, there is a book about it. It's linked in the description, a quite famous one, which simply has the title additive combinatorics. And it's really good. And yeah, it's really kind of an illustration of what this subfield of mathematics is in this case. So let's get going. So I think, kind of at least in my biased perspective, there's a very beautiful video, a lecture series on additive combinatorics by Gauss, I think, which is linked in the description. But in my very biased point of view, this is all about arithmetic progression. And what is that? Well, even if you haven't heard the name, I'm pretty sure you know what that is. It's something where you just have some sequence of numbers and the difference between them is always the same. So the prime example of this is what people usually call the little Gauss, I guess. I'm not quite sure. Well, there's this famous story that some little Gauss did that during their time in school. Like they had to add up all numbers from 1 to 100, and you can pair them up, and then you can come up with a formula. But this is a bit, and then it's always contributed to Gauss, and then it's kind of called little Gauss. So Gauss did a really great job promoting their mathematical life, I guess, because I think this one is much older. Certainly the old Greeks knew that already, maybe it's even older. So where the arithmetic progression in this case is just step 1, it's just very simple. You can have step 2, you can have step 3, step 4, whatever. That's kind of arithmetic progression, AP for short. And this is like really old, as I said. The little Gauss doesn't go back to Gauss, that's what I claim, but it goes back to much longer. At least the old Greeks, so like 2,000 years ago-ish, more probably. So it's kind of a very classical question to study those arithmetic progressions in numbers and whatever. So that's what I call arithmetic progression, and you study them because they're kind of nice, or they reveal extra patterns, like in my little Gauss here. This would be something like, oh boy, I'll probably do it wrong in this case. 100 times 99 over 2 or some shit like that. Potentially there's an off by 1 error. Doesn't really matter. As far as I can see, it should be probably, I really probably have an off by 1 error here. Let me try again, because the number here says 101. So I probably should write 101, and then there are 50 of those. So 100 over 2 times 100 over 2. Little Gauss. So as you can see, little Gauss was smarter than me. I needed a picture to remind myself that there is 101 showing up. Anyway, so you study arithmetic progressions because of in their own right, they are beautiful, people like them, and also because there are other hidden patterns. And this is all you need to know what additive combinatorics studies. Some form, some variations of this, where I would like to interpret this very broadly. So it goes into game theory, huge quotation marks, as on my next slide. Whatever, kind of different types of things, more discrete structures, it's combinatorics, finite geometry, something like that. So here's something, type of question you would see. So here are the Z mod P's, Z mod N's in general. So sometimes, so I usually like to call them Z mod N, Z, but some people just write Z mod N. Sure, like in this picture that is stolen from Wikipedia, some people would write FP, for example, for the field with the number of elements P. something. But anyway, the cyclic groups. And you can ask this the kind of the arithmetic progression type question. You have two finite subsets of the cyclic group. What can you say about the sum? And yeah, so here's the standard theorem that you will see here. As for example, the size of the sum is always bigger than p. So the minimum of whatever and p. So it's not always bigger than p. It's bigger than the minimum where p appears. And what could it be if you're studying the sum of two sets? Well, it's the sum of each, the size of each set separately. So here you have A and here you have B. This is kind of the type of questions people study in additive combinatorics. And maybe much nicer. So let me make it a little bit nicer, but this is kind of a broad overview. Some form of arithmetic progression, some form of an additive question about set things. That's what people in combinatorics study, I guess. So here's one of my favorite games, which I have not, game theory, you know, which I have not played a lot, I think I only played it once or something, and I already forgot how it goes. So let's see whether I can remind myself how it goes. So it's a famous card game with 81 cards, so 3 to the 4 cards. And they come in four different flavors, and each flavor exists in four different patterns, and each pattern exists in 3 different flavors. That's why you get 3 to the 4 cards. So the patterns are something like you have your type of a shape. So here you have this, I have no idea what that shape is. You have something like an oval and a diamond, and every shape can have a filling, empty filling, kind of a filling, or a kind of a stripe filling, and has a color, or like red, green, and blue, and there's a certain number of them. So 1, 2, 3, for example. So these are the 4 patterns, and each one comes in 3 flavors: 1, 2, 3, red, green, blue, something like that. And you have those number of cards then, 3 to the 4. And the goal of the game is, and you get points for that, I think, as far as I remember, someone can correct me, is to find sets. That's why this game is called sets, where all features are the same or different. So you have the 4 features, the 4 patterns. So here's a set. Those 3 cards form a set because, well, the numbers are all different, 1, 2, 3. The shapes are all different, diamond, funny shape, and oval. The colors are all the same, red, 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 and the kind of the shading is all the same, whatever, stripes, stripes, stripes. So that's a set. And the way how this fits into the rest of the video, I'm not trying to promote this game. This game is super old. I played that when I was young, like a million years ago, when the old Greeks were around. So the point here is that we can think of those cards as representing points in the set, right? So that's why we have 81, so 3 to the 4, where every pattern is one of the corresponding components, and every flavor is an element of Z mod 3. And those sets are actually 3 arithmetic progressions. So Little Gauss was 1 arithmetic progression. If you have a difference of 3, it's 3 arithmetic progression. And then you can study the game of set by studying those type of questions in additive combinatorics, which is probably kind of nuking a fly, but I will still promote it that you want to study properties of the game set using additive combinatorics, because I really think it's actually really the point is it's a good way to remember what additive combinatorics studies. Most people would probably definitely not study properties of set just using some big hammers from additive combinatorics. But here's a theorem about set if you want. So every one of those sets, the 3AP free subsets, kind of the opposite of this guy, is of size kind of is bounded by 3 to the n divided by n. And this is in capital O notation in the sense that, well, this 3 to the n divided by n is an upper bound from some n onward. So it's not really studying sets, because set is really for a fixed n, but it's more like a generalization of that problem. And this is kind of a blueprint example of what additive combinatorics studies. This is called Rhodes' theorem in that type of object here, zmod 3 to the n, where n is now the parameter that's allowed to vary. And this really, that's what it does. That's what additive combinatorics does. It somehow studies combinatorial properties to kind of mimic things used in number theory. And Roth theorem is kind of a classical theorem in number theory, which is about arithmetic progressions in sets of integers instead of in kind of this finite type of kind of setting. I hope that makes sense. So this is a kind of a question that answers a question about the game sets if you want. But it's kind of a weird way because it's not really answering any question about the game sets, but more like the long-term progression. So in game sets, you would lay out 3 times 4 cards, usually like 12. And this theorem wants to tell you that there are 3 to the n. So remember, n is 4 in this case. So 81 over 4 should be somewhat an upper bound. So something around, well, let me just claim 81 over 4 is 20. So somewhat around 20 cards. You need to lay out 20 cards to be sure to find a set. And indeed, that is really the case. So 81 over 4 equals 20 is a little bit of a dangerous thing to write. I will still write it anyway. And this is really just an instance of finite geometry. Why do I do quotation marks? It is an instance of finite geometry in the sense that there's a notion of a cup set, which is really just a subset of our friend here, where no 3 elements sum to the 0 vector when we see this as a vector space over the 3 field with 3 elements. Okay. So F3, which is really just a different notation, as I said, for zmod 3. And in the above example, for example, the 4 yellow points is such a cup set. So they never, no of these 4 points, only most 2 of these 4 points lie on one of those lines, and the lines here are a little bit difficult to see. So the points is just the 3 by 3 grid here. It's whatever. It's z to the 3 squared, so this 3 by 3 grid, and the lines here are the horizontal ones, the vertical ones, and then diagonal in one direction and diagonal in the other direction, which makes 12 of them. And the above, as I said, is a cup set in the sense that no 3 elements sum to the 0 vector, no 3 elements lie on any nice line here. And yeah, in set, for example, you could show where set would be n equals 3, that the size of a cup set is indeed 20. So my kind of fun approximation here almost is actually true. Well, no, this is still not true. This is still not true. But 20 is still kind of the maximum number of cards you need to lay out in the game set to always be sure that there will be some set that people can find. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed this video, and I also hope to see you next time.